G'day guys, I hope you're having yourselves a great day. If you watched our most recent video when we received the ECM machine and grinder, you will know that they're both in desperate need of some love. So today we've got some genuine ECM burrs that we're going to chuck into this guy. If you stay tuned, you also have the chance to win this Rhino Wares hand grinder. So like I said, we just could not get a good extraction out of this machine. Majority of the issue is this grinder. It's very old. The original burrs are still in it and it's made a lot of coffees. So we've got the genuine ECMs here ready to go in. And I'm probably going to dig a little bit deeper than I normally would for a grinder just because it is fairly old and it's had zero maintenance. So sit tight, and then at the end I'm going to explain how to win this grinder. So first things first, if you have a little dosing cup, I would highly recommend just popping it under there when you get this started and put it on something soft or a cutting board or something you don't care too much about because we're going to make a little bit of a mess. So first thing, using your smaller screwdriver, you just need to take this little grub screw out that holds the hopper in. Pop that guy down there. Now this normally will have an O-ring on here which is quite fiddly to get out. You may need to twist it and it'll probably get damaged. Don't worry, you don't need it. It's a good thing to have, but yeah, you definitely don't have to use that. Undo the 3 little Allen key bolts on top using your Allen key. So this is just on the adjusting section of the grinder. Pull those guys out. Now don't worry too much about where it is, we're going to worry about dialing it in later. Pop that off, and now we've exposed the upper ring which the upper burr is attached to. So if we just unscrew that using your hand, it shouldn't be too hard. Again, this does have an O-ring on it, which is kind of the one thing giving us resistance. Oh, just keep spinning it out. And then you get to that point. There's your upper burr. As you can see, they're quite dirty and they're quite blunt. You shouldn't be able to run your hand across that easy without it causing, not damage, but it should grab. So that's the upper burr. We're not going to take the bottom one out just yet. We're going to take your Allen key again and take this front Allen key bolt out. Now what that's going to do is allow us to slip this little guy out. And that's your little chute. So as you can see in the front there, that's quite dirty. Don't undo those 2 bolts just yet. I would recommend pop this guy down here, go face first to start with, give it a bit of a tap, spin the burrs, kind of get everything out. Don't run into everything behind the grinder. And go upside down. Same thing, just to kind of get as much out as you can to start with. Let's move these guys, eh? Just trying to look cool. That's better. Now, this part can be a little bit tricky. Using your bigger screwdriver and your small screwdriver, pop that guy into the hole. You'll see it's sort of hanging out the chute. And now that's going to allow us to undo the bolts in the top burrs without it spinning around. Once they're loose, you can take that guy out. Pull all 3 of the screws out from the lower burr. and then using the smaller screwdriver, if you go back up through here, you can pop it up like that. So be careful not to damage that. You can take it off beforehand, but if you're careful, it's not going to do any damage anyway. So take your Allen key again, undo these two front bolts. Now take one of them out. Be careful not to drop it because it's a bit of a pain. Before you take the other one out, put your hand across that little section, because if it drops down inside, it's not the easiest thing to get out. The easiest way is pop your Allen key through it, and then you can sort of let it come out like that. Now once again, pop your grinder face down. And then we're going to grab the grinder brush, if you have one, and we're going to clean out inside. If the grinder hasn't been pulled apart in a while, there will be parts built up inside. So take your smaller screwdriver, and if you have a look at the sections nearest to these little blades that help guide the coffee out, there will be little bits of built up coffee against the edges. So give those a good clean out, and that will assist with a smoother exit of all the grounds. Now we need to remove the upper burr from the adjusting section. This is easily done. Just grab your flathead. They will be fairly tight. Well, they should be, but in this case they're not overly tight, which is a little bit alarming. And then that guy pops right off. As you can see, that's also very worn. A lot of chips in the teeth as well, if you can see that. They're just not as smooth as they should be. Well, as they will be in a moment. That's comparison of a new versus old. Now I'll give this guy a clean. Get into all the small sections. It's only going to make it easier later. You can remove the O-ring as well, but being a little bit older, I'm not going to stretch that O-ring because I don't have a replacement for it. You can give it all a nice good wipe as well with a cloth. A little damp cloth will make it a little bit easier. And there we have it. Now we're ready for reassembly of all the components with the new burrs. So I've given everything a nice clean, including the top of the grinder, because there's a couple of parts you can't get to later, purely for aesthetics, a little bit of barista OCD. So we can do either one first, it doesn't matter, but we're going to do the upper, because it's out of the grinder, it's slightly easier. Give these guys a little clean as well, makes it a little bit nicer to work with. Just get them started with a small screwdriver. And now don't tighten them all the way down just yet. work your way around and make sure that the burrs are sitting in place all the way around. It's nice and flat. And then grab your big flat blade screwdriver, just so that it nips up. Working your way around. Then just do a little bit at a time. It's just going to assist in making sure that the burr is nice and flat. Now you can use a torque wrench and get these to the correct setting. Just do them tight. It'll be fine. It's not going anywhere. That one's done. Now onto the top one. So I've moved the camera so you guys can see a little bit better. I've got a little bit of a trick here that helps. As you're putting in the lower burrs, try to sit it in there evenly, lining up the holes for the screws, and then using your smaller Allen key, pop it into one of those thread holes gently, and then it gives you the ability to move the burrs around slightly to centralize those holes before you push everything down. Now, looking into the exhaust shaft, you'll be able to see if the burrs are located all the way down. I'll pop up an image now to make that a little bit easier for you to understand what I'm saying. Double check that everything's still moving freely. Very good. And then you can start to pop in your screws once again. Just getting them started with the smaller screwdriver. Just so that they gently touch. And then using your screwdriver, back that way through the chute, then go around and do the same thing, just slowly, little bit by bit. Just ensuring that it's all nice and even. Once again, you can torque these down, but with a flat blade screwdriver, you're just not going to strip this, so it'll be fine. That is now tight. Give it a spin, make sure everything's clear, everything's working freely. Looking good. So now that we have the grinder all clean, everything is ready on the top end to start going in. Now, if you get a tiny bit of machine oil or even just a little bit of water on this O-ring, it just makes this a little bit easier. Just pop it around there and then screw that guy down. So go all the way down until the burrs touch, and you'll see that because it'll actually start to spin the lower burr. And then just go back a little bit just to make sure that they're not touching on first startup. Now we can take the chute distributor, pop it back on there. The easiest way to do this is to put the little bolt on the Allen key and then pop it through there just to make sure we don't drop anything. Get that bolt started. As you can see, it's hanging. Now definitely don't have to tighten these ones too much. It's on there nicely. Now of course I gave the chute a good clean out inside as well. Now we can install. These are quite a firm fit, which is great. It just makes it quite tricky to install again. Just make sure that's all the way in, back to where it was. Grabbing the bolt. Make sure you do that one up nice and firm. Now, if you install this before you try to do this, it's going to be very hard to get that bolt in. So make sure you do that in that order. Now we can reinstall the adjusting guide. Now it doesn't really matter where you put it. Just make sure you line it up so that the holes all align. And then pop your Allen key bolts in. You don't have to do them just yet. Once you've got all three of them in. Holding the ring. Tighten those Allen keys. Now this is only plastic, so you don't have to over tighten. Now just remembering, if we're going to check the adjustments, watch down inside, and if the burrs start to turn, make sure you come back, because you do not want those to touch on first startup. It's going to damage your stuff, and we don't want that, because then we have to do it all again. Then we can reinstall our hopper. This is as clean as it will get. Yes, I know. And grabbing your little grub screw. These are quite fiddly. They really are. I don't know why they've done that, but they have. So we're going to make do. It's slightly easier if you don't pull everything out that far, but when you're replacing the burrs, you have to. Pop that in and just nip that up. It's not going anywhere. So the grinder is now all together, and as you'll see in a lot of videos, this is a completed service, which is actually incorrect. So I'm going to show you the next step that you must do when you install new burrs. So what I have here is some beans that I'm definitely not going to drink. Fortunately, I have a lot of people send me samples at the cafe. Some of them are pretty bad, so these are perfect for seasoning new burrs. And that's all they're good for. If you need beans to season your new grinder or your new burrs, just head down to the supermarket, grab any of the beans off the shelf there, because that's all they're good for. So now that the grinder is turned on, we're ready to run some beans through it. Pretty much all of them. I'm going to pop up a headphone warning because this is not the quietest grinder in the world. Depending on your grinder, most domestic grinders are only designed for 1 kilo a day, which means it's not designed for back-to-back grinding. So give it a break between a few shots, go and do something else, make a pour over, and then come back, let everything cool down a bit, and then go again. So once you've gone through, a couple of 100 grams of coffee, the burrs are nice and seasoned. Look, some grinders can take up to 1 kilo before they're really seasoned, but that's going to be more than enough for now. So the reason I say that that's okay for now is simply because in your next dial-in process with the new beans you grab or the new beans you have, you're going to be using a little bit more beans to go through while you're adjusting everything. So we're not going to go through a dial-in process in today's video. We can save that for another time if you like, or there's 8 million other videos on the internet that already tell you how to do that. I would always recommend just grabbing something on the cheaper end for your beans, for the dial-in, especially when it's a new grinder or new burrs, because it's not going to be right. You're going to go through a little bit of coffee. But just remember, you're not wasting coffee, you're using coffee to perfect the end result. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay, completely normal. So that's all it takes to replace the burrs in your ECM grinder. Now the same rules apply to a lot of other grinders as well, if it's a flat burr grinder especially. But if you're not confident in doing this, don't do it. Give it to someone who's either confident or competent to do this job, because you can do some damage and sometimes it's just not worth it. Personally, I don't charge a great deal to do this job because it's something I enjoy doing, and I'm quite confident and competent in doing this job because I've done it quite a few times. So this grinder obviously came with a machine, and now that needs a service before I can test this grinder because the it needs some love. I've got all the parts, that will be in the next video. But this video is not over yet because I haven't told you how to win this Rhino Wares grinder. This is my personal grinder. I've done a little upgrade, which means it's time for this to go to its new home. Now there's not really any conditions. All you have to do is subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below in this video why you deserve this. That's it. Anywhere in the world, anybody, you can win this. So pop a comment below why you deserve this grinder and I will just randomly pick the best answer. So if you've been paying attention to any of our videos, you know that anything goes. So if you give me a stupid reason, you're probably going to win. So thanks so much for watching, guys. Have yourselves a great day and happy brewing.